This session now, where we're looking at longitudinal data sets, and the data sets that we're going to be introduced to fall kind of into three categories. Firstly, we have the FAOSTAT data, so this is official government statistics that have been reported since 1960. This is a long time series of data that many are familiar with, that we all use one way or another. But probably don't realise the depths and the details of the data. So we're going to hear a bit more about FAOSTAT. Then we have a couple of discussions on what's more household survey data sets with the 20 by 20, the 50 by 2030 initiative and the RuLIS data sets. So we'll hear about those. And then we have two presentations that focus more on animal disease data sets, and there's one from FAO, which is the EMPRES-I, and then we have an introduction of the data set, the WAHIS data set from OIE. So let me introduce Irina Kovrova, who's going to talk about the FAOSTAT data set. Thank you.
Hello. I will be able to use so many things together. I'm going to talk about livestock data which are presented in our FAOSTAT website. The FAOSTAT is the largest repository of agricultural production data. We have over 1 million time series records from 1961 for over 220 countries. And this data covers agricultural production, trade, emission and agriculture, forestry, food security, fisheries, price for agricultural commodities, food balance sheets, land use. In total, there are 15 domains. My team is called crop, livestock, and food statistics. We are responsible for 3 domains, which are crop and livestock production, trade of agriculture and food commodities, and food balance sheets. I will present quickly which data we have in each of our domains, how we collect this data, and how we input missing data. I have 5 minutes, so I will try to be very quick. First, production domain. In production domain, we have number of live animals. So it's a number of big animals, number of small animals, number of poultry like chickens, turkeys, geese, ducks, and number of beehives. Then we have livestock primary data, which consists of number of slaughtered animals and meat production, number of milk animals, milk production, number of laying chickens, eggs production, and natural only production. Then we have livestock processed section, where we have production for cheese, butter, oil, all processed livestock items. Then we have trade domain. In trade domain, we again have trade of live animals and trade of livestock products. And maybe here is less interesting is food balance domain, where we compile balances for all commodities, including livestock commodities like meat, milk, eggs. Now I show quickly how our data looks like when you enter FAOSTAT website. We have countries, list of countries. Okay. We have list of countries. Then we have elements. Now we are in the live animals section. So as element we have only stock. For livestock primary section we'll have here a number of slaughtered, carcass weight, production. And here we have commodities. In case of live animals, they are names of animals, camels, cattle, and so forth. Here we have years, so you can call full time series for example, for cattle, and we have time series of 60-61 for number of cattle in each country. We have also aggregations by regions and world aggregations, so it's already done inside of the FAOSTAT. How we collect our data? Production data are collected mainly through the annual agricultural production questionnaire, which we send to countries. We request their live animals, number of slaughtered, all what is presented, all items which are presented in and elements which are presented in our FAOSTAT domain. Milk animal, number of milk animals, milk production, number of laying chickens, eggs production, number of beehives, and honey production. We also try to collect our data, through, where are we? Okay. Through different official and unofficial data sources, like official data sources like National Statistical Office's website and publications, Eurostat website, CountryStat, and unofficial sources, usually it's publication like Oil World, BARS reports. Then very quickly about trade data. Trade data sources are original country files compiled by the national custom offices, and we harvest this data from the United Nations Statistics Division. We have about 135 official reporters, countries that provide trade data, and for non-reporters we use mirror statistics for non-reporting countries. Estimation. If we don't have official and unofficial data, we input this data automatically. Usually we use an ensemble approach. I don't want to go here into details. For example, for number of live animals, we use ensemble approach. Slaughtered animals, first we compute and input off-take rate, that is ratio of slaughtered animals to live animals, and we input off-take rate, and after we compute number of slaughtered animals, like by multiplying number of live animals on off-take ratio. Meat production is a triplet, because meat production is equal to number of slaughtered animals multiplied by carcass weight. So two variables of this triplet should be known, and the third variable should be calculated. And again, here we use an ensemble approach in order to input missing data. Number of milk animals in milk production, and number of laying chicken and eggs production. Missing for this category of data, missing data are imputed automatically by the hierarchical linear model. Let's move to trade data. For trade data, if trade quantities are missing but dollar values exist, we impute quantities using median value of the trade flows of that commodities. For non-reporting date countries, as I said, we use mirror data, mirror trade data. That I don't know. I think it's clear that mirror is that exact corresponding trade data for the partners, and we invert the trade flows. Okay. Here there is always possibility to improve our data quality by improving response rate to our questionnaires which we send to countries, by using innovative data approach like Earth observation data, by, let's say, establishing closer contact with countries that provide to us data, that they can come to our website and review again this data and update this data, and by collaborating with international and regional organizations, or by participating in meetings like today, trying to find different data sources and different possibility to find new data sources. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Irina. So we're not having questions now, as we've said. Questions come through on the Menti database. Now, I don't see Neli here yet. So if you don't mind, Fairouz, where's Fairouz? Sorry, I think we'll move ahead with the... oh, here's Neli. Bang on cue. Welcome, Neli. Yes, come. Sorry. So, sorry, Fairouz, we'll stick to the original schedule. Sorry to throw you straight into the... No, that's fine. Okay, so Neli is here. Neli is going to tell us about the 50 by 2030 initiative. Okay, do you have some? You have some slides for that. Sorry to.
No, it's okay. So my name is Neli Georgieva, and I work in the statistics division of FAO. And here I'm going briefly to present you the most recent statistical initiative that the ESS division at FAO is joining. I will try to be very short, but the initiative is huge, so probably you'll have additional questions after, and I will be delighted to answer. So the initiative aims at closing the agricultural data gap, because it's obvious that in most of the developing countries the data are either not produced or produced not at regular basis, or produced but not disseminated and not used. So the initiative, in fact, you see, it's to close the agricultural data gap and to promote evidence-informed decision-making. The initiative aims to assist 50 developing countries, low and lower middle income countries, to strengthen their agricultural statistical systems. And the methodology for the initiative is based on two existing already methodologies. One is the LSMS methodology, and more specifically LSMS ISA part of the World Bank, and the AGRIS program, which has been developed by the Global Strategy here in FAO. It's a partnership. So we say that this is a partnership between the partner countries. These are 50 countries, low and lower middle. The multilateral implementers, there are 3 multilateral implementers of the initiative: FAO Statistics Division, the World Bank, and IFAD for the data use component. And of course, the donors and the development agencies. These are the donors that we have for the moment: Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, USAID, German cooperation, Italian cooperation, Australia, and most probably we will have in the near future the European Union. The initiative offers, in fact, 2 models for assistance to countries. One is the pure agricultural survey program, integrated agricultural survey program. for countries where there is already a strong household program in place. And the other is an integrated agricultural and rural survey program for countries where the agricultural and household surveys are combined. In fact, the assistance from the implementing partner consists of technical assistance plus funding of the activities. And the funding, of course, is conditional, and there are conditions, and it is the takeover of the financial resources should be incremental by countries and so on. There are conditions, but in general, we are helping also with funding the statistical activities. So the initiative is based on so-called core module and rotation modules, the methodology. So these are the modules in the purely agricultural survey program. There is a core agricultural module which is implemented every year, and it covers mainly the agricultural production. When I say agricultural, it's crop and livestock. It's not only crop, because in some countries agriculture is considered only crop, but here it's crop and livestock. And this core agricultural module collects the more obvious data on production that each country should have every year. And then there are so-called rotating modules, which are implemented in addition to the core module. And here in this program, there are 3 modules. The first one is income, labor, and productivity. These are more economic indicators that are, more economic variables that are collected, and economic indicators that are calculated. And production methods and the environment module, which collects information on practices. And then machinery, equipment, and assets module, it's evident it collects information on machinery, equipment, and assets. In addition to that, for the agricultural and rural survey program, there is one additional module, which is implemented for non-agricultural households, and which consists of collecting information on income and living standards. And here you see very briefly the core module questionnaire. This is specifically for livestock. These are the usual informations that we collect every year. And the usual main indicators on number of heads, on milk production, on egg production, and so on, meat production, and so on. And of course, there is crop production in the questionnaire. I know that this meeting is about livestock, but crop is integral part of the livestock production also. Then income, labor, and productivity questionnaire. You see here that these are the questions referring to livestock. There is ownership, input, labor. Of course, the same question exists also for crop-related activities. There are also questions on livestock health, vaccination, treatment, and so on, and costs related to livestock. There are sections on aquaculture and fisheries, on forestry. There are additional sections on labor input by household members and external workers, and other costs that are entirely for the household or the holding and not linked to a specific activity. This is the living standard questionnaire for non-farm households, where a lot of information about demographic and socioeconomic characteristics of the whole household and the household members in some cases are collected. The production methods and environment questionnaire collects information on practices used for the livestock production, breeding practices, housing, feed, watering, use of pastures, and all these kind of things. This is an information that is really very important. It is collected periodically, 2 or 3 times over 10 years, for example. And it is in addition to the production data that are collected. Then machinery, equipment, and asset collects information on the machinery used and collects also information of the use of animal power. And also on residential buildings and ownership. So what we offer to the countries, in addition to the classical statistical production, let's say, questionnaires, data collection, this time we focus also on data dissemination. We try to improve their data dissemination practices and programs, and we also work with them on the microdata dissemination and cataloging. We use DDI format for cataloging microdata. And we try to improve really the visibility of the data and the use of data. The use of data, of course, we work together with IFAD, which is in charge with this component of the initiative. And for the method and tools, there are testing of new and better methods and integration of survey approaches and technologies. The World Bank colleagues are in charge of this component. What I want to say in addition is, it is maybe answering one of your questions in the papers, access to data. Data are, the ownership of the data is on the partner countries. We are not owners of data. We are just helping countries to collect data, to preserve this data, and to better disseminate and use this data. However, we work with countries and invite them to collaborate closely with us, especially for the microdata dissemination, and to give access to their microdata sets here in the FAO, the new microdata catalog that is established in FAO. And this is how the countries will join initiative. So you see the initiative started in July 2019, last year. And each year we expect that 4 or 5 countries are joining, and we will work with each country between 6 and 8 years. And very shortly, thank you very much. And here you see the 3 implementing partners and the actual donors for the initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Neli. That's really helpful and interesting. So, Neli, questions are being gathered through an electronic system as we talk, and then will be given out at the end. So now I'd like to introduce Piero Conforti, who's a colleague from the Statistics Division again, and he's going to tell us about the Rural Livelihoods Information Systems, which is another data series based on household survey data.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. So basically what you heard from Neli is a very important activity that our division is doing in order to get more data, support countries to improve the quality and collect more data that is not available at the moment. This initiative, which is a joint initiative of our team in FAO with one of the World Bank teams in the Living Standard Measurement Study and part of the IFAD, it's something that is aimed at using the data that already exists. So a few years back, we started looking into the fact that there was a piling up number of those Living Standard Measurement studies that you might be familiar with, and some other studies that were kind of similar in characteristics. So what we did was to try to join forces with this colleague and try to have a little bit of a more systematic processing and harmonization for what is possible in data that has already been collected, so with some limitations, but trying to harmonize and use the data that was already there. So we came with this initiative. What is this initiative concretely? We are trying to propose a number of data products. We have some ready-made indicators, which are like averages, medians, and things like this. So point indicators refer to countries. Most of them come from household surveys. Why? Because household surveys are, at the moment, in many countries, the single most important tool that provides data on agriculture that also speaks to some socioeconomic variables that we want to emphasize and highlight in analysis. We have some ready-made indicators from other sources which are macro level. This is kind of a inheritance of the past of this project. But I mean, these are like a complement. But what we worked a lot on is to try to build some clean variables at the micro level, at the household, at the individual, and the community level, whatever data caters for that, and try to harmonize them across different surveys around the world. And the other thing that we did was to try and build a facility with IT that would allow users to build some customized indicators by using microdata that are not accessible, because not all microdata are accessible, and this is an issue. So the data are still under revision, but there is a platform that we will see and that can be browsed. The idea is to cater for different type of users, the more experts, the less experts. The idea is to share a lot of documentation. So basically, much of this work is done with Stata do files that we are willing to share, and our procedures that are also available on the website already. And the idea is also to link it to research, to, let's say, in a way, improve the quality and, let's say, put these things at the disposal of people who can use them and actually find mistakes, because it's hard to keep under control such a huge amount of information. These are the surveys. So we have surveys for 38 countries at the moment. Actually, we have 18 LSMS ISA. That's a mistake. The numbers don't add up. But OK, so we recently added a survey for Malawi. Yes, I'm fine. So these are, I say, some LSMS living standard measurement surveys, some other different surveys. Most of these have microdata that are publicly available at the moment. So you can go to a website and download them, the microdata, the raw microdata. Okay? Some of them are not publicly available. There are about 7 of them that were not publicly available, which were given to the World Bank, not to us. So we ourselves cannot access the microdata. We have just the possibility to have colleagues in the World Bank processing these data with the same technology we use and disseminate it. So the indicators are by and large clustered in 10 groups that reflect a very practical approach. Emphasis is especially on income. Okay? To some extent, this is a follow-up to an older project, which was called the Rural Income Generating Activity. Some of you may have heard, which was based solely on living standard measurement surveys data, study data, and basically was computing only income aggregates. We built from there to try to enlarge this. And one section is on livestock. The idea is that in each of these clusters, when you have indicators, we make an effort to propose cross-tabulation with a number of other variables that we call qualifiers. So we care about what's rural and what's urban. Of course, with the limitation that we are working with national definitions, so we don't have much homogeneity. We have the degree of participation of the households in agriculture. We have something on a small scale versus large scale based on the SDG technology. We have something on sex, which of course is intuitive at the individual level, is more complicated at the household level. And we have something on expenditure quintiles, which are basically levels of income. Okay? So we take expenditure as a proxy for income, and we try to see what happens there. So livestock. This is by and large what we have on livestock in terms of indicators. Then we have all the variables, which I didn't list because it may be very long. But the idea is that we work mostly with these tropical livestock units, which I know it's something highly unsatisfactory for many specialized colleagues who know livestock very well. We had to find some kind of common numerator to, let's say, put together apples and pears. Because this is what you need in this case. We were also criticized in some instances because we were told that basically the tropical livestock unit have something to do with the metabolic properties of animals, whereas in this context it would be useful to have something that is related to the price or to the value of the livestock as an asset, which is something indeed quite complicated to gather as a piece of information. This is by and large what we have. Just a few examples. Okay, here I plotted a few data for a few selected countries that are relatively clean. So you see here the small ruminants and the large ruminants. I deliberately squeezed the scale of that one to make it comparable. This is just the average number of small ruminants and large ruminants that you find in these countries at a household level, in an average household. In those periods, and with, of course, with all the limitations of the grouping that we have, that is far from perfect. I know this number for Bolivia stems basically from sheep, goats, and alpacas, and other animals of this sort, which are particularly present in the average households. And of course, we are working here only with the households that do have livestock, okay? We took out those who don't raise livestock. So of course, you can comment, you're welcome to comment on these numbers. These are the TLUs, again, the tropical livestock units seen by expenditure quintiles. So how across different countries, the number of tropical livestock unit, number of livestock in livestock holding households varies across the income spectrum, let's say. And of course, you see sometimes interesting things that you don't expect. And of course, the only way to perfect this data that is processed in a fairly homogeneous way is to go through it and to add expert knowledge and to peruse them and to have them being used by people who know maybe the specific context. Same, this is the contribution of livestock into total income in livestock keeping households. The idea here is to give you more or less a snapshot of the type of information you can find in here. Of course, you could pick the livestock contribution to total income and break it down not by expenditure quintile, but by sex of the prominent sex of the household, or by rural urban, or by another of those typical qualifiers. Or you could use the microdata, which is also available, to build your own analysis and your own tables, which are for the countries that have the data available. So what's the way forward? We have this first product out, which is available. I don't know if I could link it, I would show you the webpage, at least the homepage. The data is still under revision. And we are completing a systematic data revision and outlier detection and imputation procedure on which we put quite a lot of effort. We are planning to expand on poverty indicators. We have a project for using this data in collaboration with the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative on computing a rural multidimensional poverty index, which is ongoing. So we've been working on some of the surveys, and we are moving toward field testing some of these indices. So we would like to reinforce the part on poverty. In essence, this is a project that comes out of the FAO line of work on reducing rural poverty. This is one of the strategic programs. And the idea there is to, let's say, have a more powerful and moderate indicator of rural poverty that we could use. So this is one of the things we are doing. And of course, one thing that is very important for this project is to strengthen partnership, especially at country level. So our hope is, in a way, to join forces with the 50 by 2030 initiative and make this not really a dissemination platform for microdata, but a tool in which countries can use the technology that is behind this data processing and work to produce variables and indicators that are generated by the new data collection exercises. So basically, the enlargement of the enhancement of the community of users and contributors is something that we regard as very important. I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piero. That was an excellent overview of that, and I'm sure that's raised lots of questions, and lots of people will be interested in finding out about the RuLIS data set and how to make the best use of it. So now we're going to change track a little bit, and we're going to move on to animal health information. And we'll, to start off with, Fairouz will be telling us about EMPRES-I.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so I will give you a presentation on EMPRES-I, a brief overview. This is a global animal disease information system, and I will focus a bit on African swine fever, how we make use of this system with African swine fever. You know, this disease, which is highly infectious, with a mortality that goes up to 100%, and where FAO is very much engaged. So obviously, this is an initiative. I mean, the EMPRES-I system is an initiative that has started 2004. We are quite a number of people involved in this, in the development and improvement of the system along the years, and with the support also of donors and so on. So I will just give you a brief overview of the system itself. So you have this global platform, EMPRES-I, it's in the middle of the screen. And so what is interesting is that the data can be entered in different ways, so with the app. And here, in this presentation, I will focus mainly on the use of the system at a global level. But you will have in the next session, my colleague Asma Saiduni will give you an overview on the use of EMPRES-I through the app itself at country level and how EMPRES-I is used also at country level. But I will mainly focus for the global purpose. Then you can enter data also through upload file, which allow you really to enter a huge amount of data. Here I'm talking about animal health, all disease events that have epidemiological information, geolocation, and so you have a very elaborated file where that allowed you really to import all this big amount of data. And then there is also an analysis component, which is also very much elaborated with production of maps, of graphs. You can export the data, produce reports. So there are quite a number of features that, and I can give you later on some more information if you are interested. Sorry. So just also to show you also the use that we make with this system. So so far there is over 100,000 records that are available in the system, covering mostly 100 diseases, which are diseases that are notifiable to OAHI, but also diseases that are also neglected diseases that are important for countries. So, but obviously starting with transboundary animal diseases such as avian influenza, Rift Valley fever, African swine fever, and foot and mouth disease. And it covers 189 countries, and the sources are multiple. So we have OAHI, FAO, reference centers, project, and also data provided directly by national authorities. And also, we also track information through media. And this information is also available in the system. And in fact, on the right, you can see what I'm particularly very much part of a group where we perform disease intelligence, where the scope is really to early detect potential threats. So there is an elaborated system in place that we have in FAO, where we are really constantly checking for new potential alerts, and we monitor also diseases such as African swine fever. And this is done at headquarters, but through a real, also the region, where we have a decentralized office in FAO that contribute to this activity. We have also emergency center for transboundary animal diseases that are located in some countries and regions in FAO. Also, we collaborate with international organizations, with national authorities, and we have also some web sources that we use. And there is a whole process where we also verify the information, we analyze it, we produce also, we perform risk assessment, and we disseminate. So the dissemination of data is really crucial. And here I would like to also mention the GLUS+, the Global Early Warning System Initiative, where OAHI and WHO are part of this system when we collaborate together to verify information. African swine fever, so data in EMPRES-I, now trying to focus on African swine fever. We have over 16,000 records in the system, covering 72 countries, and with the first data, 1958, when it was reported in Portugal for the first time. Yeah, just this is to show you the use of the system. We produce on a regular basis maps where all the data on African swine fever are in the system. This allows really to perform a regular analysis and to update it on a regular basis. And here what is interesting, it's on this map you can see all the outbreaks, and this is covering the period from only August 2018 to now. And you know, African swine fever was first reported in importantly in 2014, then it in Europe, East Europe, and now actually we have also, it affected also Belgium, so this shows the interest, and then moving also, and also affecting Asia. So we are talking about 13 countries, I think, in Europe, and 11 in Asia. And so what with the use of this system, so we continually are able, with the historical data and the data that we continue to update, analyze that information, and you can see that these dots are over the African, the peak density. So we are using also FAOSTAT, and we are using so different, the system has different layers that allow you to do some elaborated maps. And all this allows us to produce weekly updates, specific update on African swine fever that distributed to the international communities available on the website. So we produce also some more specific analysis, and we disseminate this information through more restricted list of recipients. And we also, another activity that we perform that I think is also very important to share with you, we also conduct some forecast of African swine fever based on the information that we have, with also experts' opinion contribution. And this, we collaborate with other division in FAO, and this information is also disseminated through early warning, early action bulletin that have and this deals with threats that have an impact on food security, on livelihood, such as an early warning, early action bulletin that is produced by another division and available also on the website. We also provide this information to the food chain crisis management unit also, who release also another bulletin, which is a more cross-sectorial bulletin, because it also provides threats on fish diseases, forestry, and plant diseases, and so on. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. My last slide. So, just to give briefly a bit, so the idea was to show what are the limitations of such a system. Of course, one first, before going into detail, the limitation that we are talking about technology. A system needs always to be modernized, and this has cost, and obviously this is the modernization depends, and the maintenance also of the support of we need to have the right funding. And we are in this phase where we are upgrading the system because it needs to be adapted to new technologies. We are also, with this purpose, we really want to improve the analysis component of the system, really to have to enhance risk analysis, modeling, and forecasting. So really to have a very accessible system that allow really to produce easily some risk maps that can be then used, and really to support the forecasting activities. And another point that I also mentioned yesterday, which I think is really key when we talk about that kind of information system, is really the interoperability. Interoperability with other information system. This system has already integrated some other system, like in epidemiological genetic information. We are in a phase where we are also integrating some laboratory management system, because this is key as well for in the area of animal health, and the idea also to have livestock movement, integrated prices, water point market. So this is what we are looking for to really improve this system. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fairouz. Now, FAO doesn't work alone in animal health information. And there's a very close relationship between FAO, OIE, and the World Health Organization, and this is called the tripartite. And Paolo Tizzani is going to introduce us to WAHIS, which is OIE's animal health information system.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Paolo Tizzani. I am a veterinary epidemiologist. I work at the World Animal Health Information Analysis Department. That is basically the department that collects all the information about animal health from all our member countries, validate the information, and publish the information. So in the next slide, I will try to focus and to give an overview of the system, the key features of the system, and how the information that we are collecting can be useful for the community. We are speaking about longitudinal data, so the OIE is collecting data since a long time. We started collecting information in 1924. We start to collect information about 8 diseases, and now currently we are collecting information about 117 OAE listed diseases. Very important point, all our member countries have the legal obligation to report information to us. So all the information published on the system are only information officially reported by member states and validated by the OAE. First information were collected just through paper form until 1996. In 1996, it was launched the first online reporting system. It was called ND Status. And then in 2005, we launched the current system, the WAHIS, the World Animal Health Information System. Which kind of information we collect in the system? Basically are information about animal health, so about the occurrence of the diseases, about quantitative data about susceptible animals, cases, deaths. We collect information about the preventive and control measure applied by member states. And we collect also what we call some additional information. It is about animal population, about veterinary services, and about country capacities in terms of diagnostic tests, in terms of vaccine production. What is happening now is that in 2020, and it really is going to go live very soon, we will launch the new system called OAE WAHIS. It will be launched in the first quarter 2020. In time, evolved the number of diseases for which we collect information, but as well also the global coverage. We start with 28 member countries, and currently we receive information from 206 countries, 182 member countries, and 24 additional non-members or territories. So we can say the coverage is basically global. The system is not only a passive system. We are not just waiting the member countries to report information to us, but as Fairouz already cited, we are also doing some active search for an official information activity through different channels. So one of the channels is the GLUES, the tripartite activity, so the collaboration among OAE, WHO, FAO to share rumors about the occurrence of potential occurrence of diseases not reported by member countries. But we are also using, and the most important tool we are using now is called EIOS, that is a project led by WHO, is Epidemic Intelligence from Open Source. It's basically now a platform that collects rumors on the web, aggregate the information, and a daily basis we have a check about potential unreported events, and if we notice some inconsistencies between what is circulating in the web and what is officially reported by member countries, so we contact the CVO member country, we confirm or not confirm the rumors. Just to give you an idea, in last year, 20%, around 20% of the alert messages received by the OAE was due to our active search activity. So it's really is having a real big impact on the sensitivity of the system. So what is going to happen now is that WAHIS is going to become OAE WAHIS. The main feature of the new platform will be following some suggestion of our user will be a more user-friendly platform. We really work a lot on the representation of spatial data, so we are going to use improved mapping system. We work a lot also on the interoperability and interconnectivity of the system. So as I already said yesterday, we will publish the API that will allow other systems to connect to our system. But also we are going to connect our system with other reporting systems. So one of the main features of the new platform will be that, for example, we are working closely with the European Commission, and we are going to connect our reporting system with the animal disease notification system. This means that a focal point from a country will have to enter the information about reporting some animal health event only one time, and then the information will be shared among the two platforms. And I think the most important point for us is that all the information will be completely open access. Not only the information reporting since the launch of the platform, but we are going to migrate all the historical data. For sure, the information since 2005, and we are working to see if it will be possible to migrate also the information since 1996. The main idea is to facilitate the reporting to the country, from the country, in order to have good quality data, but also to promote as use as possible the use of our data. Just to screenshot to give you an idea of how the platform will look like. Just to highlight the main functionality that all the data reported will be exportable. And there will be a completely new public interface also that will allow some data analysis, data manipulation, data visualization directly on the platform, but there's also a large data extraction tool that will allow to download and to access easily all the information reported by member countries. And I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paolo. That was very helpful. And thanks to all of the speakers this morning, and thanks also to I forget your name, sorry, to Esther, of course, yeah, who's been busy capturing all of the notes from this session, and we'll be capturing the main ideas that come out of the discussion as well. So I'm going to hand over to Alan and Vanessa, who will deal with the questions.
Great, thanks, Tim. And thanks again to all the presenters. Can I ask all the presenters to come and sit on the podium? We've been harvesting questions. How many did we get, Vanessa? 37. So we won't be able to take them all. Some of them are quite specific, technical questions, which I would encourage the questioners to directly collar the presenters during coffee and ask those questions. But what we've tried to do is to kind of cluster questions around themes, things that came up several times. And so I've done a bit of synthesis of that with Vanessa, and I'm just going to present some of those questions to the panel. Okay, so we heard about 5 different data collection initiatives. So there was a few questions around data access and the extent to which these data sets are open and usable by the world. Does anyone want to comment on that?
I can start. For our platform, the main improvement is really that all the data will be freely available. The main problem we had with the previous platform, the data was, in general, the OIE exposed all the information you received, but the problem with the other platform was that the data was just possible to display the information, but not to download the information, or it was very, very difficult. So we worked a lot on it, and basically all the information that will be published. It will be possible to download in different format or to an Excel sheet, or there will be also a data mining tool to do some more complex queries on the system, and to download using a large data extraction tool.
And things like FAOSTAT are open access, yeah. What about the 50 by 2030 initiative?
I see here several very important questions that I, in fact, didn't answer during my presentation. in partner countries, we work with official statistical institutions. In some countries, it's the statistical office. In some other countries, mainly in Francophone countries in Africa, these are the ministries of agriculture or the ministries of livestock. We work with official statistics. Our objective is to strengthen the official statistical bodies to produce statistical information. Of course, research institutes will be also involved, as they are involved, for example, here in Europe in improving methods or improving the official statistical information. This is one thing. And as part of the official statistics, this information should be disseminated according to the rules. In fact, one of the principles is that all information that is collected with sufficient quality and without confidentiality issues should be disseminated officially for everybody. This is also one of our activities, and we are working very actively on this. Regarding the microdata dissemination, anonymized microdata will be disseminated. There are methods for anonymizing individual data records, individual files, and this anonymized data will, the objective is that they are accessible for public. Okay. Even we invite quite strongly countries to transfer these anonymized microdata files here in the FAO catalog.
Yeah, okay, sticking with the 50 by 2030 data, there was a lot of interest in which countries have been selected, how they are selected, what the sample size is, what the cost per survey is. Can you answer any of those questions?
For the moment, we have 10 countries in that we work on, either our colleagues in the World Bank with LSMS ISA or we with AGRIS survey. These 10 countries that potentially will be transferred into the initiatives are Senegal, Uganda, Georgia, Armenia, Nepal, Cambodia, and we start recently, we are starting to work also in Ghana, where we already did a lot of tests, and we worked also with some Latin American countries, but with them we will stop. How the countries are selected, the country should apply. And there are some preconditions that the country should fulfill, and in addition, the country, the official authorities of the country should make quite strong commitments in terms of resources and in terms of willingness to work with this new system and to disseminate and use the results. For the moment, we are working closely with the World Bank, of course, and there is an idea to associate IDA funds also to these initiatives through these regional IDA projects. And there are 7 potentially designated countries where we will start to work, and these 7 countries are in West-South Africa.
Okay, and the cost per survey?
The cost per survey depends really on the country, but in our budget forecasts, it cannot be more than $800,000 per year for the whole data cycle of the year, because in some countries there are several waves of data collection in 1 year.
Okay. Okay, and then maybe for all the presenters, there were questions around how you capture reliable data in kind of informal systems, where, for example, there's no kind of official slaughter facilities, slaughter is done at home, there's no kind of milk recording, those kind of things. So how do you collect that and reliable data in those kind of informal systems? Piero?
We do not collect data, as mentioned. The project I presented is about harmonizing data that already exists, but I can provide an answer because I've been working also with the 50 by 2030. Basically, it's very hard to get data on these things. Unless you have, let's say, surveys that go very much in depth in the sampling, they can get a handle on what happens in more informal operations. Of course, there is a whole gray area between what is officially recorded and what is totally informal. But that's a problem. That's one of the problems of data collection. Because, I mean, the attempt here is to have something that is nationally representative, which means you cannot have a survey that specializes only on that particular segment. Huh? You could have that, but that would be a study on its own that may give you an idea of the size of the phenomenon. So it's not easy. And in livestock, I think we have a huge black hole. Allow me to mention this. We don't do yet a very good job at capturing nomadic livestock. That's a big problem because, as you see, we are mostly centered around stable operations. And it's more difficult to make sense out of a different way to organize the operation. This is a big thing on which I think the only solution is to work together with technicians, people who know the actual organization of production, to try and work out something that is useful, parsimonious. I see that in the question there is one question that is interesting. It says, look like there is a lot of data being collected. Why we're still talking about lacking of data? The problem is that sometimes data needs to be collected for a purpose with some degree of coherence. One of the things that we've been doing as a statistics division is propose ways to elaborate a strategy on agricultural statistics so that you prioritize your area given your budgets and you avoid collecting data on whatever in a, let's say, uncoordinated fashion. This is very important. And of course, technical injections are very important to this. I don't know if I covered the question. But,
yeah. Okay. There was this issue of tropical livestock units, and maybe I'll ask the audience to reflect on that. I mean, this question of how you compare apples with pears. How do you compare a chicken with a cow? And should we be doing it on body mass or should we be doing it on price? Has anyone got any thoughts on that? Tropical livestock units, are they a good way to go? Annie? I can always...
I thought somebody else would say something. So, in the absence of anyone else saying something, I'm going to... You have 5 seconds for somebody else to volunteer. I think something that might be maybe important to think about in the context of this question is the fact that in all of FAO's data sets, you do provide metadata, is my understanding. So anybody can go to look at an item in a FAO data set to see how it was calculated. So as long as you've explained how you calculated your TLUs, there is nothing to stop anybody from doing a back calculation to get numbers of animals and then a forward calculation to get value. I mean, that what they're actually asking you to do is a 3-way calculation to get to that number, but there's nothing to stop them from doing it for themselves. Is that right?
Definitely, yes. Actually, we have a reference table that comes from a publication of FAO. So there is a specific link to that table and that page. But this is just a mechanic for minimum transparency. Of course, our preoccupation here is more to have something that is useful for the purpose for which we want to aggregate. Because, of course, yeah, I mean, say, in the context of the poverty analysis, I was told who cares about comparability in terms of metabolic rates? I want to care in terms of the value of the assets and the income stream that you can generate from it. No? So this is, in a way, it's an interesting argument. And of course, we saw, and some colleagues hinted to that, but I didn't see any solid literature, that there is some connection between the metabolic rate and the value of the asset, which would make sense, because size, at the end of the day, it's something that speaks to many things. But of course, any expert's opinion would be great there.
I think Tim has an expert opinion.
I have an opinion about most things, but it's usually rubbish. No, my feeling with tropical livestock units, and also the word, the tropical livestock units, I mean, a lot of places aren't necessarily tropical. I mean, livestock units should be rather specific to countries and production systems and so on, and I think very often they're very crude generalizations. Also, I think they make a lot of sense in some situations when you're perhaps trying to estimate grazing pressure, for example, and you're combining your livestock units to make equivalent ruminant species. So you're looking at grazing pressure or land pressure or whatever. I think, you know, they could be useful in some ways when you're trying to look at pressure on grasslands or something. But combining cows with chickens by weight, to me, is just complete nonsense. It's completely irrelevant and an irrational thing to do. And it serves absolutely no purpose, because also that, you know, with poultry you have a high turnover, you're producing a lot of things throughout the year, and it's the offtake that's more important than the actual standing biomass. So I don't think it makes much sense in those circumstances, but I think you could probably come up with estimates of value. I think FAOSTAT probably has estimates of value for different products. But I would certainly, if you really must try and combine these things, I think some estimate of their value over the course of a year would be a more appropriate measure.
Good. Yeah, can we move on? We have just 5-7 minutes left. There was quite some questions around users of data, FAOSTAT in particular. Does FAOSTAT track use? And I suppose the idea was if you know who is using your data, you can kind of tailor your data more to users.
I don't have statistics about location of users, but I know that our data is widely used by different institutions, by media people, by academia. A lot of researchers are writing questions, and from that I know that they are using intensively our data. As there was a question why our data should be used by policymakers, for example, in the United States, where they have their own statistics. Our data is let's say, unique because it's it covers all the world. It's comparable all over the world, and we have very long time series. Of course, if a country has good statistics, its own statistics, they are not obliged to use our data, FAOSTAT data. After I catched several questions whether carcass weight and offtake rates are available on FAOSTAT. Offtake rate is not available yet, but carcass weights, yes, you can find, I don't know where to look. Carcass weights are there, they are available. We don't have split by beef and dairy. We have total stock of animals, of cattle or of buffalo. We don't have split on this kind of split that maybe people who work with livestock data are used to have. We have aggregated data in FAOSTAT.
Can I change tack a little bit?
Just to supplement very briefly what Irina says and emphasize that we do have a systematic monitoring of the users of FAOSTAT. And recently, the Office of the Chief Statistician undertook a specialized survey. So users were approached in a survey to study exactly not only location, but the type of use of data. So we monitor this very closely, and we adjust our policies based on this. Irina mentioned that, but perhaps it fell in between other things. So I just wanted to make sure that this message goes through. Thanks.
Okay, so users are monitored. Someone asked an interesting question around policy making and challenged the panel to kind of cite an instance where your data has been used to change a specific policy. Neli?
I would say that this is one very important part of the initiative now, because it's clear that even if the data exists, they are not very much used for policy. And that's why one of the components of the initiative is the data use for policy making, and for this part, IFAD is the leading partner, the leading institution, but we are working closely together. And this is true that there is a problem in these parts. In fact, many of developing agencies and developed countries, they are using the data in the developing countries, and in the developing countries themselves, these data are not used for effective policy making. And there was one question here for gender disaggregation. Yes, gender disaggregation is included in all questionnaires.
Okay. Piero, you had something?
Again, I just wanted to emphasize that I've never seen a policymaker using one data point. I've seen throughout my career the FAOSTAT data being the backbone on any international analysis in agriculture. And this is, I think, what speaks for it. So it's not that the policymaker uses the specific piece of information. It is the fact that this is, as a matter of fact, one of the data sets that is most widely used at the international level to analyze agriculture in all its forms. So it's behind any effort that is aimed at comparing things across the world. So I would be afraid of establishing those kind of mechanical links, which are not really there. Often policymakers, the best they can do is ask a question, and you have to be lucky if the question is a good one. And then someone goes there with information. So this would be my take on this. Thank you.
So, Michael, Victor?
I mean, I kind of agree with you, and I think it's this, I mean, from my perspective, I worked very closely at the policy level in one country in Southeast Asia, in Laos, and it was very clear countries don't want to just use external data. It has to come up through their own system. So part of it is yeah, people like researchers and policy think tanks will use the FAOSTAT, but they're not going to say, oh, FAOSTAT is the main thing. They're going to use multiple points. But I think the point is we also need to train national agencies and national staff to be able to use this data in kind of their policy processes. So that's the really important thing. They're not going to say, oh, FAOSTAT says this, so we're going to do that. They're going to, if you can put it in their policy briefs, make sure that the researchers know how to use it and take that data, then they can claim it, okay, the National Research Institute has put all this data together and said this. But they're not going to say, because FAO says this, we're going to do that. Or ILRI says this. They really don't want to use external data. They want to kind of consume it themselves, appropriate it.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, we're coming to the end, but go for it, yeah.
Just 1 second. I saw several questions about our FAOSTAT data and estimation and imputation methods. Our imputation methodology has been changed recently, and now we are preparing documentation metadata that we are going to make available on the FAOSTAT as soon as possible. So please come to our FAOSTAT and you will find soon all necessary information, because I know that now maybe it's not available. Maybe some methods are not very clear because it's too generic in the current documentation of the FAOSTAT. So as soon as possible, it will be available on the website.
Okay, last word from EMPRES-I.
Thank you. Now, just to comment also, Mr. going through the question that I see here in front of the screen, and there were 2 questions that were quite interesting. The first one was how, with EMPRES-I, we collect data from the countries and comparing this with OAE. So first of all, what I would like to highlight regarding EMPRES-I is that it is not a notification system. It's really EMPRES-I, as I highlight the fact that it is used for can be used by you as well. It has a public website where the data that are available for public can be used and analyzed. But it has also, it's also a system that it is used at country level, but not with the purpose of sharing the data with FAO. So it's really to support veterinary services in handling their data and managing and analyzing their data. And here you will hear later the application MRI, the event mobile application is really through support of veterinary field services with the use of innovative innovative tools such as app, how countries can really improve their data collection in a really impressive way. But the purpose is really to share this information at national level for decision makers. So it's where FAO is really providing support in capacity development. So this is one component that I wanted to highlight.
Great. Okay, I can't say no to Andrew. Last one, and then we move on.
Sorry, so just thanks to the panel for your comments. One in particular struck me was this fact that we don't deal very well with mobile pastoral populations. And I don't really feel we can just leave it at that. They are systematically undervalued, and that plays through into the investments that are made in those pastoral areas based on that undervaluation. And we're not talking about a small number of people here. It's possibly 200 or 300 million people, some of the poorest on earth, and definitely a group that they, USAID cares deeply about. So I think for a data community to just move on to coffee bothers me. I think it's a huge issue. It's one that we spend a lot of money on. And I think is there some merit in thinking about a module for those countries where pastoral systems represent the majority of their livestock sectors? Is there some work to be done in terms of developing a module, building the capacity in those countries? And Roy, I don't know if people are familiar with Roy Benke's work, but these pastoral systems have been revalued and they come up with completely different answers. And I think we need a more realistic estimate of the value, the numbers of animals and their contributions.
So who would like to respond? Neli? Yep.
We are very well aware of this problem, and for this reason, within the global strategy, we have prepared the guidelines on the enumeration of nomadic and transhuman livestock and how to produce productivity statistics on this. It's, however, a very specific survey. It cannot be combined with the other surveys. So there are techniques, there are, let's say, classical approaches, and there are more modern approaches using drone and satellite imagery and something. And I think that there is, this methodology will be presented by Hugo in the next session. There is a methodology, and we started within the global strategy first phase to work with some countries in Africa where the transhuman and nomadic population is really very important. And the idea is to continue in the next years. Luckily, if we manage to start the second phase of the global strategy, to strengthen this part of the livestock surveys covering the nomadic and transhuman livestock. But the methodology, at least the statistical methodology, is already developed.
Paolo?
Yeah, just for the low-income countries, in order to improve the accuracy of the information collected, in the new system we are planning to launch, it will not be for the first release, but will be for a further release, a specific module called local report. So basically the country will have the possibility that don't have, for example, a centralized database to collect information about animal health, to use our system to collect and store information for their own use. And then part of the information they will have the possibility to push and to send to the central system. So I think it will at least help in improving the part of data storage and data collection at country level.
Okay, I mean, it could be that that's a topic that we could pick up as a working group, maybe thinking about pastoral systems and the difficulty of collecting data in pastoral systems and what we might be able to do about that. So maybe something to think about over coffee. But meanwhile, I'd like to thank the presenters very much for taking time to come and present and also to field the questions. So let's show our appreciation.